Bullies tried to humiliate the new black teacher, but in 60 seconds, they were begging for forgiveness. "Look who they sent to educate us," whispered Tyler Morrison, deliberately loud enough for the whole room to hear. "I bet she's only here because of racial quotas, right, guys?" Cruel laughter echoed through room 301 at Lincoln High School as Kesha Washington, 28, finished writing her name on the board. It was her first day as a literature teacher, and the 16 students in front of her watched her like predators studying their prey. Could this be the moment everything changes? Tyler, son of the owner of the largest car dealership in town, leaned back in his chair with that arrogant smile that only those who have never faced real consequences can display. Next to him, Madison Pierce discreetly filmed with her cell phone, probably to post later with some funny caption about the school's new DEI hire. "I'm sure she doesn't even have the real qualifications," muttered Jessica Kumar, the perfect model student who used her academic record as a license for cruelty. "My dad said, it's impossible for someone like that to have gotten here on merit." Kesha turned slowly, her eyes scanning every face in the room. There was something in her gaze, a disturbing calm that made some students shift uncomfortably in their seats. It wasn't nervousness or insecurity. It was the kind of serenity that only exists in those who have weathered far worse storms. "Interesting theory," she said, her voice soft, but laden with something indefinable. "Tyler Morrison, right? Son of the Morrison who was investigated by the IRS last year." Tyler's smile faltered for a split second. How did she know that? "And Madison Pierce," Kesha continued, walking calmly between the desks, daughter of the councilwoman who voted against the free lunch program. "I wonder how her followers would react to that." Madison stopped filming abruptly, her phone shaking in her hands. Kesha had grown up on the south side of Chicago, where survival meant reading people before they read you. By the time she was 12, she could tell the difference between someone who talked tough out of fear and someone who was truly dangerous. These spoiled teenagers, they weren't even close. "Now," she said, returning to the front of the room, "let's talk about Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. Can anyone tell me why Atticus Finch is considered a hero?" Dead silence. For the first time in years, room 301 was completely silent. No one. "What a surprise," Kesha muttered, opening her copy of the book. Maybe because he defended an innocent black man at a time when it could have cost him his life. Tyler tried to regain control. "It's just an old book about how people like you have always underestimated people like me." Kesha interrupted, her smile not reaching her eyes, "and about how that arrogance has always been the Achilles heel of those who think they were born at the top of the food chain." What Tyler, Madison, and the others didn't know was that Kesha Washington wasn't just a teacher with a master's degree in American literature from Northwestern University. She was a woman who had systematically documented every injustice, every comment, every condescending look since she decided to go into education. And today, for the first time in months, she smiled genuinely because she had finally found the perfect place to test a theory she had been developing about privilege, consequences, and the delicate art of teaching lessons that are never forgotten. While everyone watched her with a mixture of confusion and growing discomfort, Kesha maintained that supernatural calm of someone who holds secrets too powerful to be revealed before the right time. Could this calm hide a plan that turns the tables completely? If this story of prejudice and justice has piqued your curiosity, don't forget to subscribe to Black Voices to find out how 60 seconds of courage can completely rewrite the rules of the game. Over the next 3 days, Tyler Morrison and his group turned the campaign against Kesha into a full-time project. Madison created a private Instagram group called DEI Disaster, where she posted secret photos of Kesha grading tests, always with captions like, "Our qualified teacher needs a calculator to add up grades." Jessica Kumar, who considered herself the intellectual of the group, began publicly questioning Kesha's every answer during class. "Teacher, I'm sure Atticus Finch represents the white savior complex. Don't you think it's problematic to be teaching literature that perpetuates stereotypes?" It was a well-crafted trap. If Kesha agreed, she would appear to be contradicting the curriculum. If she disagreed, she would be labeled not woke enough for a progressive school. But Kesha did something that made everyone uncomfortable. She simply smiled and responded with a theoretical depth that turned each provocation into a 20-minute masterclass on post-colonial literary criticism. "Excellent observation, Jessica," she would say. That takes us directly to Toni Morrison's work on whiteness in American literature. Tyler realized that his traditional tactics weren't working, so he decided to escalate. During break, he posted an edited video on the school's TikTok account showing Kesha explaining literary concepts, but with background music suggesting that she was too cool for a normal school. The video had 847 views in 2 hours. What Tyler didn't know was that every comment, every post, every whisper was being meticulously documented by someone he would never suspect. Dr. Marcus Chun, a history teacher at the school for 15 years, had become a silent observer of the situation. Asian American and the son of immigrants, he recognized the patterns he was seeing. He had walked these same hallways when he was the only non-white teacher on staff. "They're completely underestimating you," he told Kesha over lunch, handing her a discreet folder. "I've documented everything I've been able to gather over the last few days. Posts, comments, even conversations I've overheard in the hallway." Kesha quickly flipped through the contents. Screenshots of private conversations, printouts of Instagram stories, even WhatsApp messages between Tyler and Madison organizing operations against her. "Marcus," she said, closing the folder with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You just gave me exactly what I needed." Meanwhile, Tyler had convinced 2 influential parents to question Kesha's pedagogical suitability at a meeting scheduled for Friday. His father, Richard Morrison, had already called the principal, suggesting that maybe the school was trying to be too progressive, too fast. "She has no experience," Tyler confided to Madison. "I bet by the end of the week, she'll be asking for a transfer. These people always give up when the going gets tough." But on Thursday, something changed in the dynamics of room 301. Kesha arrived carrying a small box that she discreetly placed on her desk. Throughout the class, she maintained the same unsettling calm. But there was something different, a contained energy, like a predator who had finally decided to stop playing with its prey. "Class," she announced at the end of the lesson. "Tomorrow we'll have a special lesson on narrative consequences. We'll discuss how characters who underestimate other characters always face educational twists and turns." Tyler, Madison, and Jessica exchanged mocking glances. Another desperate attempt to sound profound. But if any of them had paid attention to what Kesha was typing on her laptop during the break, they would have seen emails being sent to very specific addresses. The Lincoln High Public Relations Department, the school board, a few local journalists who covered education, and a Twitter account with over 50,000 followers specializing in exposing prejudice in schools. In the box on her desk, carefully organized, were printouts of all the evidence Marcus had collected, plus some she had documented herself using methods she had learned in her years navigating hostile environments. Kesha wasn't just a brilliant teacher with a master's degree from Northwestern. She was a woman who had grown up documenting injustice as a survival mechanism and who now had the digital tools and the right contacts to turn evidence into revolution. Tyler Morrison would wake up on Friday thinking he was facing another day of torturing the inexperienced teacher. He had no idea he was about to discover why underestimated people are the most dangerous, especially when they stop defending themselves and start attacking. For a moment, watching Tyler laugh with his friends as they left the room, Kesha felt something she hadn't felt in months. The sweet, intense anticipation of someone about to teach the most important lesson some students would ever learn. While everyone laughed at the inexperienced new teacher, something unexpected was taking shape behind the scenes. Not just a defense, but a response so well orchestrated that it would forever change the definition of educational consequences at Lincoln High School. Friday, 9:15 a.m., Tyler Morrison entered room 301 with the confidence of a general marching to certain victory. His mother, Catherine Morrison, was already seated in the front row along with 3 other concerned parents. All white, all wealthy, all convinced they were about to witness the ultimate humiliation of the inappropriate teacher. "Good morning, class," Kesha said, her voice strangely cheerful. "Today, we're going to have a very special lesson about narratives and their consequences. We have some guests who have joined us to learn as well." Tyler whispered to Madison. "She has no idea what's coming. My mom is going to destroy her." Kesha walked over to the projector and connected her laptop. "Who can tell me what happens when a character completely underestimates another character in a story?" Silence. She smiled. Let me show you a real-life example. The first image appeared on the screen. A screenshot of the DEI disaster Instagram group. The room went cold. Tyler Morrison, Madison Pierce, Jessica Kumar. Do you recognize this? Catherine Morrison sat up straight in her chair, confused. What does this mean, young lady? It means, Mrs. Morrison, that your son created a private group dedicated solely to humiliating me and documenting my incompetence based purely on the color of my skin. Kesha clicked to the next image. Screenshots of private conversations where Tyler organized operations against her. Cruel messages, detailed plans, mockery of racial quotas. Tyler was pale. How did you get this? This is an invasion of privacy. Interesting question, Kesha replied calmly. Dr. Chun, can you explain to the class how you obtained this evidence? Marcus Chun stood up from the back of the room. No one had noticed her presence. Screenshots of public stories, conversations that students voluntarily shared with me, and posts that you yourselves made visible to anyone at the school. The next image made Catherine Morrison jump to her feet, a photo of herself at a charity dinner, smiling next to a sign that read Lincoln High, committed to diversity while secretly funding campaigns against Kesha's presence. How dare you? Catherine began. How dare I what? Mrs. Morrison. Research who's really behind the campaign to remove me. Richard Morrison Automotive donated $50,000 to Councilman Hutchkins' campaign who publicly opposes diversity hiring in schools. Kesha clicked again. Emails appeared between Richard Morrison and the principal suggesting that the school was trying to be too progressive too fast. That was a private conversation, Catherine shouted. It was a documented conspiracy, Kesha corrected. And here's where it gets interesting. The screen now showed the front page of the morning's local newspaper, Morrison family investigated for tax evasion. Below was a photo of Richard Morrison being escorted away by federal agents. Tyler was shaking. This has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me, Tyler, because when you and your family decided I didn't deserve to be here, you forgot to check whether you had the moral high ground to judge me. Kesha turned to the class, which watched in absolute silence. You see how a simple background check can reveal inconvenient truths? The FBI had been investigating tax fraud at Morrison Automotive for months. I just made it easier for them to find some additional evidence. Madison Pierce was crying. You ruined his life. I exposed the truth, Madison, just like I exposed the truth about you. The screen changed to show racist posts that Madison had liked and shared over the past 2 years. And you, Jessica. Screenshots of conversations where Jessica mocked classmates for needing financial aid, calling scholarship recipients welfare bums. You thought you could break me because I'm young, because I'm black, because people like me always give up when the going gets tough, Kesha said, her voice growing in intensity. But you forgot one crucial thing. She walked until she was directly in front of Tyler, who had shrunk into his chair. I grew up being underestimated by people just like you. And I learned that the best defense against prejudice is not to cry or beg for justice. It's to collect evidence and use your aggressor's arrogance against them. Catherine Morrison was standing furious. This is an ambush, a setup. It's education, Mrs. Morrison. I'm teaching your son about consequences. Something you clearly failed to do at home. Tyler finally exploded. You can't do this. My dad's going to sue you. He's going to what, Tyler? Kesha smiled coldly. Your father's a little busy explaining to the FBI how a company that's been reporting losses for 3 years manages to maintain $1 million lifestyle. She turned to the projector one last time. The final image was devastating, a compilation of all of Tyler and his group's posts, messages, and comments over the course of 2 years, organized chronologically, showing a systematic pattern of racial bullying against other students. This evidence has already been sent to the school board, the State Department of Education, and 3 journalists specializing in education issues. Tyler Morrison and Madison Pierce, you are suspended indefinitely pending investigation. The silence in the room was deafening. Tyler had his face in his hands, finally understanding the magnitude of what he had lost. Madison was sobbing uncontrollably. "Please," Tyler whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't want it to come to this." Kesha looked at him for a long moment. "Tyler, for the first time since we've known each other, I believe you're being sincere, but I'm sorry isn't enough to undo years of systematic cruelty." She addressed the entire class. "This is the difference between consequences and revenge. Revenge would be destroying you for the pleasure of it. Consequences is showing that actions have results and that underestimating someone based on preconceptions is the most costly mistake a person can make." As Tyler Morrison discovered that he had underestimated not just a teacher but a force of nature who turned his own arrogance into the perfect trap, one question remained. Are some lessons learned too late? Or is there still hope for redemption even after all the masks have fallen? 6 months later, Kesha Washington was being interviewed on the national morning show America's Wake Up about her best-selling book, Confronting Prejudice, a practical guide for educators. Her transformation from novice teacher to national icon had happened with a speed that still surprised her. "Ms. Washington," asked host Sarah Chun, "your educational documentation method is being implemented in more than 200 schools across the country. How did that idea come about?" Kesha discreetly adjusted the gold pin from the National Foundation for Inclusive Education. Her new position as Regional Director of Diversity came with responsibilities she never imagined taking on. "I grew up learning that the best defense against injustice is not anger, it's meticulous preparation. When you document problematic behaviors systematically, you're not seeking revenge. You're creating transformative educational opportunities." On the screen, impressive statistics appeared. An 89% reduction in incidents of racial bullying at Lincoln High, a 156% increase in minority enrollment in advanced courses, 0 reported cases of discrimination in the last semester, and perhaps most importantly, 34 other schools in the district had implemented the Washington Protocol with similar results. The program also showed something that filled Kesha with pride, a 30-minute documentary about the transformation of Lincoln High that had been nominated for an Emmy for Best Educational Documentary. Students who were once silent spectators now led anti-bullying committees, organized diversity seminars, and mentored younger classmates. Tyler Morrison, on the other hand, was discovering that some lessons take a lifetime to learn. After his expulsion turned into a permanent ban from the public school system, he tried to enroll in 6 different private schools. All of them rejected his application as soon as they looked into his digital record. The evidence Kesha had documented had become part of his permanent record, accessible to any institution that did a basic background check. "Will this follow me forever?" he asked during his 7th attempt, now at a community school 2 hours away. "Documented systematic discriminatory behavior is not something that goes away," replied the educational counselor, Mrs. Patterson, a 50-year-old black woman who knew his story well. "But genuine growth can coexist with consequences. The question is, have you really changed or do you just want the consequences to go away?" Richard Morrison had lost not only his company but also faced 2 years in federal prison for tax evasion. The investigation Kesha had facilitated had uncovered a decade-long corruption scheme involving other local businessmen and 2 city council members. The entire town had been rocked by the scandal. Catherine Morrison sold the $3 million mansion to pay for lawyers, fines, and restitution. She now lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in the suburbs, ironically, just 3 blocks from the house where Kesha had grown up. The irony did not go unnoticed by anyone in the community. Madison Pierce had seen her aspirations of becoming a digital influencer completely destroyed when brands began to avoid any association with her name. Her posts about overcoming adversity and personal growth received devastating comments from people who knew her real story. She eventually deleted all social media and was working at a small clothing store, learning for the first time the value of honest work. Jessica Kumar lost her full scholarship to Stanford when the admissions committee discovered her history of discriminatory comments. She was now attending a local community college while working part-time at a library where she ironically served many students from the communities she had once despised. But the real transformation was happening inside Lincoln High School itself. Marcus Chun watched with growing admiration as Room 301 became a laboratory for empathy and social change. Elena Rodriguez, the shy student who had never participated before, now led a mentoring program for students who had recently arrived from other countries. David Kim, who had been the target of racist jokes the previous year, started a debate club that discussed complex social issues with impressive maturity. Ms. Washington, Elena said during a meeting of the new Student Diversity Council, "We want to expand our awareness program to the neighboring elementary school. We believe that anti-bias education should start early." Kesha nodded, watching as 16 and 17-year-olds develop social projects with the sophistication of seasoned community organizers. Her old classroom had become a space where vulnerability was strength, where differences were celebrated as advantages, where students learned that true power comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. The impact extended far beyond the school. The Morrison case, as it became known locally, had become a national case study on how systematic documentation of bias could be used to create real institutional change. 3 universities included the story in the curriculum of their education programs. 2 states passed legislation requiring evidence-based diversity training for all educators. During the break at one of her lectures at the National Conference for Progressive Educators, Kesha received an unexpected message on LinkedIn. It was from Tyler Morrison. "Ms. Washington, I know I don't deserve your attention after everything I did. But I wanted you to know I've been in intensive therapy for 4 months and volunteering at a community center that serves mostly immigrant families. It took me 2 years to understand, but you weren't just punishing me. You were educating me about the kind of person I had chosen to be and the kind of person I could still become. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I had given up on any decency in myself. Your lessons were painful but necessary." Kesha read the message twice before replying, "Tyler, real growth always starts with complete accountability. Keep working on yourself. Not for me, but for all the people you will still meet in life." It wasn't about forgiveness. Some actions have permanent and just consequences. But it was about the possibility that even the worst behaviors can sow genuine reflection when confronted with real sustained consequences. She walked over to the window of her new office at the National Foundation for Inclusive Education, an office with a panoramic view of the city, where students from all backgrounds now studied in a more equitable environment, where teachers had concrete tools to combat bias, where documenting injustice had become standard protocol for institutional change. "The best revenge," she murmured to herself, echoing the word she had repeated in hundreds of interviews, "has never been to destroy those who hurt you. It's to build something so transformative that it rewrites the rules of the game for an entire generation." Her phone vibrated again. This time it was an invitation to speak at Congress about federal anti-bullying legislation based directly on the protocol she had developed. Kesha Washington, the young woman who grew up documenting injustices as a survival mechanism, who learned to turn attempts at humiliation into masterclasses on human dignity, who proved that meticulous preparation is more powerful than any cry of outrage, was now a voice echoing through the halls of national power. Tyler Morrison tried to humiliate a black teacher and inadvertently catalyzed an educational revolution that touched thousands of lives. Kesha had turned her personal pain into public policy, her individual humiliation into systemic change, her isolated experience into a national movement. She had proven that when underestimated people stop defending themselves and start building, not only do their lives change, the whole world is transformed. Tyler finally understood that some lessons are too expensive to ignore, but too valuable to waste. And Kesha, she discovered that true victory isn't just about surviving prejudice. It's about using that experience to ensure that the next generation doesn't have to go through the same thing. Have you ever turned a personal injustice into positive change for others? Leave a comment about how you reacted when you were underestimated and subscribe to Black Voices for more stories that prove that the best revenge is always the success our oppressors could never imagine and that can inspire change far beyond our own lives.